Okay, Madshus. These are sort of the youngest of the designs and constructions that we've worked with in the industry, where Fisher's got 3 years on the skis that we've worked with, and those Solomons, have been through a couple cosmetics already without changing the constructions. These have only had 2 seasons, and last year there was minor adjustments from the year before, and going forward we're seeing the least change in this line. The only real change that I'm aware of for next year is that the classic cold ski has a little repositioning of the short fibers, the reinforcing fibers for the bridge, and they're configuring it to be more specific for soft cold conditions. And they're taking their warm ski, which I've felt like is really, really good, and making it more of a universal ski than a dedicated clister ski. And then their LTD, or their green base, their clear base ski, will have a more dedicated wet, soft clister camber. So that's the adjustment. But materially and in terms of the camber concept, things remain.
So are they getting rid of, they kind of had the K1, K2, nope. K3 designation?
They'll still have those designations. Well, those are race designations on the market as cold, warm, and LTD, I think, for the green base. Mm-hmm. And the skate skis have the F2 and the F3 designations. But the K1, K2, K3 remains something we'll talk about. K2 has been a racing only thing. That's been the lower version of the warm ski. Mm-hmm. And I think the production warm ski will kind of bridge what we've referred to as K2 and K3. Mm-hmm. We've used those skis quite a lot to fit that kind of binder hard track need, and it's been really good. So I think we see a more clear differentiation between the K1 and the K3, the warm model, with the K3 taking up a little more of the slack. The cold skis from Madshus have been a little tricky. The first year of the 3.0, I felt like they were a little high and a little tough, and the window was just a little small. Mm-hmm. This year, the cambers came just a little lower. Mm-hmm. A couple things happened. First of all, in general, the skis were more accessible. You, for example, had a couple matched pairs of skis that we use for testing, and you liked them quite a lot. I mean,
I loved them in hard wax conditions. Super easy kicking, felt super fast. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, and I grabbed a pair of production skis that I liked the look of and worked them up for Gunner to race on this year. Mm-hmm. And instantly, the first time he ever skied on them was a race day. And he's like, these are awesome. They're great. Mm-hmm. So we found really good success on some lower cambers. On the other hand, for the first time in a couple years, any negative feedback we had on the skis was from missing the picks a little bit on the soft side. Mm-hmm. We had previously been leaving people with skis that were just a little tough, like really, really fast, but maybe not quite accessible enough for kick. And we definitely had a couple that were like, those are low, they're draggy. They were too slow because we missed on the low side. Mm-hmm. They do still have this really flat finishing camber, and the camber does ride higher at half and full weight than other skis in the market. So it's still this really special camber concept that those guys have that seems to work really, really well. But in those cold conditions, you got to get it just right. And this is where repositioning the laminates and the reinforcements, I think, is going to make that cold ski more rewarding, in that you can get a low ski that's got all the qualities we want, which is easy access to kick and really fast. Mm-hmm. But to be clear, we found that this year when the cambers were right. Skis, let's talk about those.
So, both last year and this year, those have been usually my favorite skis to race on. This year, I think I raced on F3s a lot, but their whole development project with this Redline 3.0, in my mind, has been amazing. They've done a great job, and they make some really fast skate skis. So
we found a lot of fast skis again this year.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, we ended up on F3s quite a lot this year.
Yeah.
There has been a little evolution in the cambers there. last year with the first round of the 3.0 skis. We found that the F2 camber was a little more universal, a little more reliable, a little more active, a little more lively. In this year's production, I felt like the F3 had, maybe it was just a winner, I don't know, but the F3 took up more slack, and where I had written orders almost exclusively for F2, I ended up filling some with F3 skis that I thought looked really good, and they were really good. Yeah. Do you notice the F3, it has the groove only in the tail of the ski. Do you feel like there's a lack of stability related to that?
I mean, there sure hasn't been. When we tested those prototypes on really tricky spring snow in Sonyafell.
Oh, yeah, Sonyafell. Yeah.
I definitely noticed it a little bit, but since we've had them here, I haven't noticed it at all. So,
okay.
Have you heard any comments?
I feel like after year one, say, for instance, Pat O'Brien talking about the T2 guys, he has, a whole team of guys on Madshus, felt like in year one, those F2s were just more reliable because, the F3s felt really, really free and nice to ski on. But then when you really kind of jammed on them, the F2s, he felt like were more reliable, and that groove was contributing a lot to the difference. This year, I don't think he felt the same at all. I felt like the feedback I got from him as well as others really kind of looked straight past the groove thing. And I think it's kind of a non-issue. And we'll definitely be way more balanced in our ordering this year between F2 and F3. What I did notice this year, and I didn't notice so much last year, was kind of a return to those Redline 2.0 differentiations. When they first came out with this geometry and were really separating the cambers quite a lot, I liked the F3 more than the F2 because the F2 had that camber out front a lot more, and I felt like I was behind it, whereas the F3 left me really in the ski in a balanced way. I need to be centered in the ski in order to feel like I have access to the kind of body positions and just moving fore aft the way I want to. I feel more competent and better as a skier on those more centered cambers, and that's the F3 for me. And that this year I felt like there was a pretty clear differentiation. So I had a very, very clear preference for F3s. What's interesting is that when the switch got hit, it was super, super clear. Like you could cross the line and all of a sudden F2s were decidedly better. The Dublin Sprint, I was testing a bunch of different skis because I had a bunch to play with, and David Northcott, who's a junior we were working with for service this year, was trying skis. And how did it go? In the morning, it was quite hard. And the F2 skis were just clearly better. And yet, as the snow sugared in and got skied, by the time the heats came around, we retested, and the F3s that had been our sort of go-to cold skis all winter were clearly better. So it kind of moved back and forth. And I felt like that F3 pair that we have was a pretty special pair. Like that was just a really, really good ski. And yet, in that hard pack morning snow, the F2 was the solution. And likewise, I think had you had a really good F2, you probably would have carried that one way deeper into a day and maybe probably raced on it all day long and would only see an F3 come into play when it's just awesome. But there's a really distinct difference, and that wasn't as clear last year. Oh, we need to talk about the base material, the green base. We were super excited when in World Championships in Oberstdorf, season before this past, they showed up and all of a sudden had a clear base because we've been asking for it for years. They really needed something to keep up in the super wet conditions. The status in the industry of clear bases is pretty interesting. Salomon is a clear winner. Rossignol is not far behind with their white base. The clear base from Fischer is much, much more limited. And so we were very curious to know like where this green base, it's actually just a clear base with a green backer, but where was that going to fit in to the scheme of things? And a bunch of people tried it early season without much success. And I will say that we definitely got into the conditions for it, but it's not a universal base. It's definitely not one of the broadest range clear bases out there. What it is a distinct advantage over the black base when the snow gets cruddy, dirty, not it's not necessarily like the go-to as soon as it wets up on clean snow with a lot of surface tension and suction. It's not like it deals with sucky new snow any better than the black base. In fact, the black base was usually better if there's really any kind of tight crystallinity in there. But as soon as you're into this old plasticky mix of crud and dirt and stuff, wow, it's really good. And we had a lot of that late in the season where I was like almost just crustying on like fields around here because there was nothing else. I was doing little practice sessions with the Northcots and you know, every time I went out I would take those clear base skis, and man, they were really good. The difference in fluoro free when it gets wet is very big, and so having that green base, the clear base from Madshus, their LTD model, I think is critical for them to be viable. And fluoro-free racing is now once again back on the table for both IBU World Cup and FIS World Cup for next season. They've found a testing apparatus, they say, that is going to work. And so I think it's, you know, very timely, and I think we will see an increasing prevalence of clear base. And this Madshus base is very viable. And Whistler, once again, we had new snow early. We were racing on Harry's in the classic race. The snow mixed in, and it took a while for that clear base to come in, and we just weren't sure it would. But by the last day, that long distance race, that clear base was really, really good. They were fast, and so that's a good one. Zero skis, they have introduced for the general distribution a zero model. They've got a pretty aggressive inlay on it, and we tested sort of a race version with a less aggressive inlay this year. Kind of raced on it again in Whistler, and it was super good. But there's now a production one with a little rubberized inlay, and we'll be super interested to test that. The camber worked very well for it this year, and we just have to get our hands on it and see how it goes.
And the only other thing is their skin skis were awesome at the end of the season this year. Some of their softer skin skis, where it was, we got a lot of late season snow, temperatures in the 30s where nothing was working, and even Harry's were icing, and the skin skis were awesome. So
yeah, it's not a category we love because it's so variable.
Yeah. With
this 3.0 chassis, we can go pretty low on the skis and need to, I think. But yeah, they seem to be working well. So it's probably been our most reliable skin model in terms of getting satisfaction, even though it's not 100%. But again, we got to go pretty low. But this year, for the first time, we started missing on the low end. So I've got at least one or two customers that ended up with skis that were a little too low and draggy. But it's really a personal thing. Some people can't stand the feeling of the skin being in contact with the snow, and other people don't mind it because it actually isn't that slow most of the time that they're working, and it kicks awesome. So it just trying to figure that out when the adjustments are so limited is tricky. But it is nice to have the total integration for that move binding. That makes it super simple to make adjustments. So, all right, that's it for Madshus.